Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this channel. My name is Abraham Leal and today I'm really inspired because you guys have been very kind with your comments on yesterday's announcement, yesterday's video. As you guys are aware, we just released the newest course, which is the ZBrush Advanced Character Course or Advanced ZBrush Character Course, where I teach you how to create a very cool, I think it's very cool looking fantasy character. It was inspired a little bit, it's like a mix between Hellboy and Kratos from God of War, so there's a little bit of everything in there. It has its own story, so you can of course check the videos down here in the description, and one of the best ways you can check any of our videos, not only the character one, but the Houdini one that was released recently, the anatomy courses for Blender that have been released, and all of the other amazing courses that we have, you can check them out in Skillshare. Hey guys, Abraham here. I just wanted to remind you guys that we upload all of our courses to Skillshare. Skillshare is this amazing site where you can access a ton of different content to learn, improve, and grow as an artist. We have all of our courses available to watch and learn from right now in Skillshare. You can check the description down here, and Skillshare is offering 1 free month trial to their premium membership. With this membership, you're going to be able to access all of our courses and watch and learn all of the amazing things that we cover with all of the softwares. So, what are you waiting for? Check Skillshare down here below. I was just watching the video and my beard is really long now. Should I keep growing it? I've always wanted to have like this full dwarf beard. Who knows? Maybe we'll get there. So today there was one pending topic that I was preparing for you guys, which is transmission with like thin objects or thin elements. And I thought it might be a good idea to try something a little bit more advanced. So I was preparing a scene for you guys. Let me show you right here. Let me set the project real quick. So work to projects 2021. So where is it? 2021 next to it live. There we go. So many projects. And we're gonna set the project. Oh my god. Projects 2021. I know it's 2022, but this is when I started recording, so everything's here. There we go. So I do have a Chinese lamp. There we go. So I was gonna do a Chinese lamp, but then I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe we can make this thing look a little bit better. I have this very basic scene. As you can see, if I were to just look through selected, it's I like to call this the Instagram composition because it's the ones that you see on social media. And if we render this, it's just a very basic floor, little like trim, and the element right here. Or actually, I haven't actually added all of this stuff. So the reason why the floor is doing that is I'm actually using the substance plugin, and I changed the height information. So I do have a little bit of displacement. I do want to have displacement, but let's bring this down to like 0.005, something like that, because the previous number was a little bit too high. I'll talk about this plugin in just a second. I first want to do a couple of other things. So yeah, this is the small little scene. Like we're just gonna do like some sort of like background thing. And I saw this photo right here. These are like sky lanterns. Here in Mexico, we know them as Cantonese lamps or something. Sometimes in certain like celebrations, parties, I've seen them in like baptisms and stuff like that. They use this because they look very cool. I do heard that they're a fire hazard, so I don't like using them. I have never used them for my own stuff, but they do look very pretty. And if you remember, there was a movie, very famous one, Tangled by Disney, and there's a scene with a lot of like floating lanterns, and the transmission of the object looks very cool. So I want to try to do something like this. And I wanted to try a Marvelous Designer to get like a more realistic clothing effect. I of course could have just like started here. Like the most basic one would be just like a cube, and then just say something like mesh smooth to get like a sort of a roundish cube like this. And then we can grab like the bottom faces. If you don't have Marvelous Designer, you want to like follow along, this could also be another one. I'm going to press Ctrl E to extrude, and then just like give this thing a little bit more, you know, room or something. And that's going to give you a sort of looking like interesting balloony shape, but it's not going to look as nice as this one. So what's this? It's pretty much a square that's a little bit bigger on the inside, and then it kind of like tapers down to the edges, and then you sew those edges together and you create a circle on the center, which the circle is the one that's going to be a little bit tricky. So let's see if we can get this. I'm going to go here to Marvelous Designer. I'm going to go to my pattern creation. I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to create a very straight rectangle like this. And then I am going to copy and paste this rectangle and grab this edge right here I'm gonna edit the pattern. Select this guy right here, move it a little bit more so it's a little bit longer. And then I'm gonna press Control and just like make this thing like a little bit smaller, like this. What this will do is it will allow me to, what's the word? It will allow me to create like the pattern that we're going for, right? Like the sort of like round looking shape. So I'm gonna grab this thing right here. I'm gonna press Control C and Control B, copy it over here, rotate it to the other side. There we go. And then Control C and Control B, rotate this around. There we go. Control C and Control B. I do have, by the way, a Marvelous Designer course for beginners. If you want to check that, it's on the link down here. So now we're gonna, I'm gonna grab this 3 patterns. We're gonna right click, and actually I'm just gonna sew them first. So I'm gonna sew, segment sewing. We're gonna sew from here to here and from here to here. You can see that the sewing lines are inverted here. That's fine. This one is just rotate around. There we go. And then what we can do is we can select the segment right here. And I think, can we like merge? Yeah, merge. Because I do want to keep this one merged. There we go, merged. Cool. And now we need to do some sewing from this other piece. So from here to here and from here to here. You can see that the it's not perfect there. Same for this one. Just move it to the side. There we go. Cool. I'm actually going to grab all of them and rotate this around. There we go. Perfect. And then now we need to do something called a free sew. Actually, we don't need free sew. We can just sew from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, and from here to here. There we go. So if we simulate this, as you can see, we're going to get the back. So if we just like do this right here, as you can see, we're going to get an interesting shape, right? Which is close to what we want, but it's not exactly what we want. And it's not that it's not like working properly. It's actually working quite nice, but we don't have like the exact shape that we want. Here's where other softwares come into play, because what I can do is I can go for a cylinder right here. And I'm going to grab this thing right here. Oh, this one. Push this up, flare it out a little bit, and create the sort of like shape that I'm going for. Now, on the top, on the cylinder, I could grab this vertex right here and make it like a sort of like a square cylinder. You guys know what I mean? So that way I have a square top, but a round bottom. I'm gonna grab this thing right here. I am gonna give it a bevel. If it allows me to. Looks like it doesn't like, there we go. One more segments, there we go. And I think it might not be a bad idea to smooth it, to be honest. So I'm going to say mesh and smooth. And this is what I'm going to export. So you can see it has a sort of like the shape of the lantern that we're going for, right? Like sort of like squarish lantern. So I'm going to select this thing, file, export selection. I'm going to do it on the desktop for now. Lamp form, I'm going to call it. And if we go back to this thing, I'm going to reset the pattern layout. I'm going to say file, import FBX, and from our desktop, we're gonna grab the lamp form. Gonna hit OK. OK. It's way too small. Let me see if I can scale this out. Let's see if we have the properties here. I think we're going to have to scale it inside of Maya real quick. So I'm just going to go here. Let's scale it real quick. Yeah, probably like that. File, export selection. Just export the exact same thing. There we go. File, import, and we import the lamp. Okay, okay. Perfect. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Still not like super great, but a little bit better. What we can do here is I can just grab my patterns and scale them in a little bit. So they're not as big and they form a little bit closer to the shape of the element. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Let's grab all of the patterns, push them up, rotate them around. And now, if we simulate, ta-da! They're going to be going on top of our little box right there. There we go. Not bad, right? Not bad. And we do get this sort of like circular looking shape on the bottom. I do think we will need to like make it smaller if we want to, but one thing we can do is, again, we can just like make these things even smaller, and that way we should be able to get a couple more wrinkles and stuff. Because the most important thing right now, I think, is to have like a really round looking surface. There we go. Cool. Not bad, right? Now what we can do is we can grab all of this, guys, and I'm gonna bring the particle distance down to like a 5. It's gonna really make things like a lot nicer. And what I can do is I can start like pushing them a little bit here and there, just to generate some more interesting wrinkles on the object. I think it's a little bit too small, so I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, just so again we get, there we go, because that still gives us enough thickness on the side to get like a really round, smooth element, but it looks a little bit looser, right? A little bit puffier here on the top. I think it should be probably puffier on the bottom. But this looks really nice. And this is one of the amazing things about Marble, is the fact that you can like iterate and create this very looking things, or very cool looking things, quite fast, I would say. And that's it. That's all we need. Again, technically, the ideal process would be to retopologize this and then do like a whole like different thing. But I'm just gonna keep it like this to make things a little bit easier. Grab the whole thing. I'm actually gonna reduce the particle distance to like 10. Yeah, so we don't get as much triangles. And I'm just gonna say File, Export, FBX, and we're gonna export this as Lantern. Let's go to Maya. Let's delete this thing. We do want to weld them. We do want to be this thing, a thin thing. So we just hit OK, and that's it. And in Maya, we just say File, Import, and we import the lantern from the desktop. Where is it? There we go. It is gonna import the cylinder, which we don't need, of course. And this is what we have. So let's just scale this down quite a bit. There we go. Whoa. There we go. We got like this very cool looking lantern. Now, again, if we take a look at the reference, you're gonna see that there's a ring, or yeah, like a, how do you call that? It's like a metal thing, right? That's holding the whole element. So one thing, I think it might have been a better idea to use a sphere, to be honest, to get this sort of like puffy look. We can try and fix that, by the way. I'll show you how. I'm gonna go into face and then right view and select like the round face, like those faces right there. And we can use soft selection. I'm just gonna press B and middle mouse button. And then if we scale this out, we can kind of like puff it up a little bit more, see? Same thing here. I'm gonna press B and just like make this bigger. And we can puff it up. Because this thing should be like it should be filled with like warm air, right? I've never flown in a hot air balloon. If you guys have, let me know in the comments how it feels. Pretty sure it must be pretty impressive. We went to a festival a couple of years ago where there were a lot of these balloons, but we've never flown on one. So now I'm gonna just grab a ring, and I'm gonna make this ring. Oh, I'm gonna play around here with the inputs. Radius, section radius should be very thin. This should be again the one that's holding it as close as possible. Now you can see that the edge is not perfect. What we can do here, if we want to make it perfect, just R and scale it down. It should be fairly round, I think. It should be fairly round, so we can just like create a little bit of an overlap there. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but something like that. And then it has like a couple of strings, and on the center it's this like torus, pretty much like a torus. I don't know if it's like some sort of fuel or whatever, but it's like a torus that creates, or it's ignited with fire. And then it flies away. So let's do a small section radius, a small little torus there. There we go. And again, we do need to add the little like metal bits that hold the torus into place. So I'm gonna make a very thin, very thin cylinder. Rotate this around 90 degrees. Let's go to our top view. Actually a little bit difficult to see. Let's just push this up. Scale it up. I would guess some sort of like steel or some, it has to be some metal that can sustain heat and stuff, right? So something like this. Control D, push it back. We can select both of them, combine them. The pivot point should be pretty much on the center there. And we can just rotate this again 90 degrees. And that should give us the very nice effect right there. So on this thing, I've seen some like sometimes it's like this where they like literally light up that specific element, and other times it's just I don't know, something else. So yeah, there we go. Now if we were to render this, panels, look to selected. Let's save this in real quick, and we render. We're of course gonna get a really horrible scene. Let's grab all of these elements right here. Control G to group them. Center pivot on the group. And that way we can scale them up and down. I'm gonna create like a, again, like a nice little composition here. So let's do like 3 of them. Like some of them slightly bigger, some of them slightly smaller. Again, 3 is a really like magical number because it's very balanced. Let's push this out. One thing we can do here, if we wanna get a very nice composition with panels, tier off copy. And that way we can have like a small little idea of how things are going to look on this side or in this side. We can grab this guy. Let's grab group 3. Just push it forward because I do want to use a little bit of depth of field to play around. There we go. I think something like this looks nice. Maybe this last one, I'm just going to rise it up a level. Same one for this. There we go. Because talking about a little bit of balance and composition, this is a lot about like taste. Like some people might see it, some people might not like it. It's about taste, right? So what I see here is that this floor is really dark and it has a lot of weight to it. So if we bring the balloons or these lamps down, everything's going to look like it's falling down. So I'm pulling them up, even though it might look like we're unbalancing the composition, because then there's just a little bit of competition there with the weight of the image. So now if we take a render, we're going to get this thing right here, which looks interesting. Let's grab the iron things, like the little round things and the bands. I'm going to assign a new material to those guys. It's going to be an Arnold AI standard surface. And on the properties of this material, it's going to be a little bit darker. It's definitely going to be metallic. It's going to be a little bit rougher. So now if we render, should like shine a little bit more, as you can see right there. That looks interesting. Now for the interesting part, I'm gonna grab this 3 things right here, and just for the sake of this example, I'm actually gonna combine them into a single element. And once it's combined, I'm gonna call this light source. I'm gonna assign a new material, but it's not gonna be a normal material. It's gonna be an Arnold lights mesh light. What this does, it converts those things into actual lights. So now when we render, what's going to happen is they're actually going to be emitting light. But in a very similar fashion to how most of the lights here inside of Arnold work, we need to increase the exposure or the intensity. I prefer to work with exposure, just something like a 10 probably, so that they actually create the light. I think that's like good enough. As you can see, we get that light here, we get light here, and it's working. If we go to perspective view and we render, here on the perspective shape, you're going to see that light is coming from all of the balloons. One of the cool things is we can use temperature and make these things really, really warm, kind of like a firelight, and that's gonna look pretty cool, right? And now comes the interesting part. Like, how can we make these things look like actual cloth? That cloth lets light through. I wish I could show you how my setup here is on the studio. It's very we call it Mexicanada or Mexicanada, where we just like scramble and get things together. It's like literally a gigantic bulb with a cloth on top of it, and that cloth diffuses the light. So we are expecting, instead of getting this harsh shadow right here, I would like to see this thing diffusing the light in a better way. So the way this works, and this is, I would say, like the important part of the process, right, is we need to assign a new material to this thing. So I'm going to assign a new material, Arnold AI standard surface, I'm gonna call this M cloth. It's gonna be a cloth pattern, very basic cloth pattern. Now, some of you might think, well, if we want this thing to shine, we're gonna use emission, and I'm gonna just turn the emission. I'm gonna give them like a warm emission tone. And yes, this is definitely gonna make it look like light is glowing through them, but it's not exactly what we're going for, right? Like it's sort of like a fake-ish like emissive, and this is what one of the students had on the last portfolio, and this is the reason why I'm doing this video. I wanted to show him the proper way to do a material for a cloth. So we're not going to use emission. We're actually going to be using subsurface. So subsurface is one of the properties that materials have that allow it to let light through, so that we can see, like when you have a finger really close to the light and it gets like red or stuff like that. That's subsurface. You can use this for a lot of things, including paper. But there's an interesting catch to this one. If I were to just like literally render this one right now, you're going to see that yes, we do have subsurface activated, and yes, we do see something happening, but since this thing is completely a thin geometry, it's not really working. So for subsurface to really work, we need to go to geometry, and we need to turn on this thing called thin walled. So now when I render, how it looks like cloth. This is what we're going for. As you can see, this is actually giving us the result that we want, and it's making it seem, as you can see here, where the cloth wrinkles are really strong, not a lot of light is going through, and we get a very, very like natural looking element. Let's jump back to our camera shape, and this is what we're getting. And not only this, you can also see that the light on the wall is way, way more intense because more light is being diffused. So how can we make this thing look even better? Well, textures, of course. So I'm gonna jump here real quick, and I'm gonna go to Substance 3D Assets. This is the substance part of things. I've mentioned this before. If you have access, or if you're buying your Substance license, or if you can get yourself an SBSR archive, there's a lot of places that share SBSR. You can look for this sort of like materials. For instance, we have this Indian paper, which I think is exactly what we're going for. And if you download the SBSR, which is the archive, you can actually load the archive directly into Maya and into a lot of different softwares to work. For instance, you can do it for Unreal. You can do it inside of a Blender even. Like there's a lot of different ones right here. So I'm going to grab this one right here. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to bring it all the way into my Substance folder. There's a Substance folder on the like your project setup. So now if we go to the hypershade, and let's clean this up, and I type in substance, you get this substance node texture. If you don't have this, make sure to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, and you can just like look for substance, and that's it. You're gonna have access to it. And here we're gonna load in that paper thing. So we just go to our substance. If we go to next to live here, there we go. We go to substance, there's going to be this Indian paper. We just hit open. I think we can do 2K just to have a little bit more resolution. And down here, we can select Arnold, and we just say create network. This will add a height map, which I don't particularly love, to be honest. So you can do, what you can do is you can click height here, and it's going to get rid of it. But it's not going to be enough, because now if I just grab this guys right here and assign the last standard surface, which is this one right here, yes, on the render, let's say real quick, on the render, we'll get more texture, but we're back to square one where we didn't have the subsurface. So what's going to happen is this. It looks really cool, looks like paper, but that's it. Now, I can see that there's like a black thing right there. I'm not sure what that is. I actually haven't checked the UVs of this thing, but I can imagine. There we go. It's not where it's supposed to be. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, so yeah, the UVs are not perfect, so I'm just gonna move them here. Scale them down a little bit, and as you can see, all of the patterns are right here. It's fine. I mean, it's a paper, so it doesn't really matter if we're repeating the pattern. That should fix something. Another thing like one of the reasons why that might be happening could be normal maps. I'm not sure. Let's keep going, because again, this is going to be fixed once we go into the actual material. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the material again, and I want to go all the way down to subsurface, and we're going to activate subsurface, and we're going to activate a geometry thin wall. However, one thing is going to happen here. The problem is the color map, as you can see right here, this multiply divide, which is carrying the base color and the ambient occlusion, is being fed into the base color. But when you turn on subsurface, you lose the color. Like the color is no longer working. So I actually need to break this connection and connect this to the subsurface color. So that way the subsurface color knows that that's the information that it needs to take. You can't have diffuse and subsurface. I mean, you can, but it looks very weird. So let's render now, and look at that. Now we get this very, very interesting effect. Again, I'm not completely sure why that's happening. Let's try smoothing things out. So I'm just gonna like press number 3 on all of them to give them a subdivision. Is the subdivision a preview, of course, but it should help it out here. There we go. That was it. So now, as you can see, this looks really, really, really cool. Now, this I'm actually going to try for the first time, but there's apparently a node that we can use to get an even better result, which is called a phasing ratio node. And what this will do is it will allow us to control how we see the light, because technically, on this like border right here, the angle at which we're seeing the cloth is more. It's like we're seeing like several layers of cloth. So we should not see as much light on the borders. The light should be coming pretty much like straight from the center. So this again has to do with the shading, or on the hyper shade. And we're gonna use a couple of nodes, 2 nodes actually, to get this. The first one is called a sampler node, sampler info. And this one is a way to get information out of the scene, right? So we're going to use the sampler info. Let's drag this to the side. And we're going to use the sampler info and the color of the object. So this one right here, the result of this multiply divide. And we're going to use another one called float math. What this float math does is we can either add, multiply, like do a lot of different things. So we're going to grab here, we're going to grab the phasing ratio. And we are going to grab the out color of this thing right here. Wait a second. Actually, this is not how it's supposed to be. Let's just grab the color. There we go. It's only expecting a float. And that's weird. But anyway, this goes into the subsurface. So here, we could just grab like an X factor right there. It doesn't really matter. And what should happen now, let's take a look. Let's save one of these elements. And if we render now, the phasing ratio should affect something there. I don't think the operation is the right one. I think we do need to multiply. And what this should do now, there we go. So now, depending on the phasing ratio, like if we see very straight through, we are going to see a lot of light coming through. But if we don't see, like the borders, as you can see here, are going to be less and less intense, which it's interesting. Now, if you're like, hey, you know what? Like, I do like this effect, but I would like it to be a little bit less because we did lose quite a bit of light from the lantern. It looks a little bit flatter again. Well, what we can do is after the float math is used, we can use a remap value. So we input the value, okay? And what we're going to do is going to be the output. And here on the remap option, this is the blacks and whites. So if we bring the black up, I believe we should get a little bit more light. It's pretty much like we decide how much or how little we want of the effect. And there we go. You can see that there is definitely a change. Definitely looks interesting. But it's not as aggressive as what we had. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I do think some of the shadows are a little bit harsh. There has to be some sort of way that we can minimize that, like this one's right here. I think it's just due to the collision, but as you can see, that looks pretty nice. Now, one last thing we can do is we can go back to the light source, this one right here, and maybe say, hey, you know what? Let's push this up a little bit more to like a 12 exposure. And by doing that, it's going to be way more exposed. And now the shadows that we're getting, yes, they're a little bit aggressive still, but they look quite nice. I'm going to change this for the thumbnail because I know you guys like the horizontal, like full HD thumbnail. So let's go down here to full HD. There we go. Let's grab this guys right here and just scale them a little bit, like that. And now if we render, oh, we're going to have to move the camera. There we go. There we go. Not bad. I don't think this looks as bad. Cool. Final little touches here. As you can see, like this thing doesn't have any material. So let's assign it very quickly. Arnold, AI standard surface. Let's do like a dark wood material with quite a bit of roughness, like a chocolate sort of effect. And that's it. That's pretty much it. One last thing we can do is if we go to the to the image right here, I can bring this down in the exposure to like a -2, and now we're not gonna have as much light contribution from that one, and we're gonna get this very cool looking effect. One last thing, as you can see, the samples here do need a little bit more help. So I'm gonna go to the options over here, Arnold render. Let's increase the sample to something like a 10. That should give me a little bit more, and I'm gonna turn on the denoiser optics so that when we render and we give it enough time, we'll get a really, really clean effect. So this could be very helpful for a lamp that you have in the room, for light that is going through a tree. Like as long as you have a surface that you want light to go through, use this technique. Try using this technique, and I guarantee you're gonna get a way, way, way better result. There's one final thing I want to do here. Again, those shadows are bothering me a little bit. But I think it's the subsurface, unfortunately. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab all of the elements here. I'm going to go to the editor, grab these UV shells here. Get them into the quad. Okay. Am I rendering? I think I might be rendering. That's why it's so low. No, I'm not rendering. Okay. I'm going to go to the hypershade now. And the paper texture, remember, it was a 2K texture. Well, what we can do is we can go all the way over here to this guy right here, and we can say, hey, repeat the UVs 3 times. So now this is like a 6K texture. It's not going to really impact the memory, and as you're about to see here on the texture of the actual lamp, the grain or the size of the grain is going to be way, way, way lower. We're going to get a really, really cool effect. So yeah, that's it, guys. Hopefully you guys like this small little video, small little lesson on a little bit of Marvelous and a little bit of Arnold. But this is what I would recommend for any sort of like shading that you want to add where light goes through an object. Tomorrow I'm gonna try to do a live stream. Okay, so tomorrow is Sunday. I'm gonna try to do a live stream early in the morning. Let's hope all of these stars align and I'm able to do so. You guys know the time is usually a little bit complicated. One last thing I forgot. One of the elements that you can do is you can grab this little guy right here, the light source, and you can say light visible. That way, when we render, you're gonna see the little like a light source down there on the lamp. So it's just a little bit of an extra touch there. Definitely need to find a way to solve those. But yeah. That's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like, share, subscribe. Remember, if you leave a comment, you might be the winner of a free course at the end of the month. Any of our courses are eligible, so make sure to leave us some feedback, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks, guys. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.